The first time he saw her, she was barefoot in the frost, sackcloth dress torn at the hem, standing in the center of his winter wheat field with both hands raised and her chin high like she'd already decided how this would end. He thought she was a ghost. And in a way, she was. Rhett Granger had buried his wife 4 winters ago, and the land hadn't known peace since. Not the kind of peace that comes from quiet evenings or empty rocking chairs, but the hard, soul-gnawing silence of a place that no longer feels like home. He'd lived through war, wolves, and wildfire, but loneliness had teeth sharper than any of them. So when he saw that figure in the dawn fog, when he raised his rifle and called out, "Stop where you are," and she didn't flinch, just whispered, "Please don't shoot. I'll give you strong children." He thought the cold had finally broken his mind. But he didn't pull the trigger. He lowered the rifle, the butt hitting frozen dirt. And he froze. Her hair was matted, thick with dust, pieces of straw tangled through it like threads in a loom. She was younger than he'd thought, no more than 20, but her eyes had centuries in them, like they'd seen generations rise and fall. Dark eyes, wild, still. She didn't come closer, didn't run. She just stood there and waited for him to decide. "You lost?" Rhett asked, not recognizing his own voice. She shook her head once. "You're trespassing." Another shake. "Then what the hell are you doing on my land?" She tilted her head. "You asked for someone strong. The land heard you." That made him step back. Not from fear, from memory. He had said something like that once, months ago, alone in the barn, after a long night of whiskey and storms and too many ghosts in his bed. He'd spoken it into the rafters like a curse. "If there's anything left out there, send me someone who won't leave." He didn't think anyone was listening. But now here she stood. He took her in, feet red from cold, dress ripped at the knees, no weapon, no coat, no name. "Where'd you come from?" "Not far." "What's your name?" She was silent. Then, "I don't remember." That shook him more than her being there. "You don't remember? Or you don't want to say?" Her voice softened. "I'll take whatever name you give me." Rhett's hand tightened around the rifle, but he didn't raise it. "You're not right," he muttered. "Something ain't right with this." She blinked. Then calmly, "Then send me back." Rhett didn't move, because the wind shifted, and for the first time in weeks it didn't feel like winter. Felt watchful. He brought her into the house, not out of kindness, out of caution. He didn't trust her, but he trusted the land less. He'd seen what happened to creatures that stayed too long in the fields this time of year. And she wasn't carrying anything, not even shoes. Inside, she sat by the fire without asking. Didn't shiver, didn't warm her hands. Just watched the flames like they were speaking to her. Rhett made coffee, poured 2 cups, pushed one toward her. She didn't drink it. "You always offer your name before you drink?" she asked. Rhett narrowed his eyes. "Rhett." She nodded once. "Then I'm Hallow." He should have sent her away. He told himself that every hour of the first night. But when dawn came, she was still there, curled up beside the fire like a dog that had found its home again. Rhett couldn't look at her without feeling the weight of that strange promise she'd made. "I'll give you strong children." He hadn't asked for that. He hadn't asked for her. But he couldn't make her leave. And maybe, deep down, he didn't want to. In the days that followed, she became a shadow in the house. She cleaned what he didn't ask her to, fed animals before he woke, cooked without being taught. She didn't ask questions, didn't open locked doors, didn't sleep in his bed. But she watched, always watched, especially him. He'd catch her eyes in mirrors, windows, in the barn rafters. She knew how he moved, how he thought, how he hurt, and somehow that didn't scare him. Not the way it should have. The snow came early, bitter and unrelenting. A neighbor stopped by with word of wolves moving closer. "You got someone in the house?" he asked, glancing at the second cup on the table. Rhett nodded slowly. "Where's she from?" Rhett didn't answer. Neighbor shifted. "Well, just be careful is all." "What are you getting at?" The man scratched his neck. "Heard things. About a girl with no shoes. No name. Shows up on farms when the old trees start cracking. Rhett didn't flinch. People say a lot of things when they're afraid. Neighbor nodded and left. But Rhett didn't sleep that night. Not because he was afraid. Because he wasn't sure he wasn't the one they were talking about. The first time she touched him, he'd just come in from chopping wood. His fingers were blue, breath steaming, beard crusted with frost. He opened the door. She was standing there. She took his hands in hers. They were warm. So warm. He didn't ask how. He didn't speak. He just let her hold him. And for the first time in years, he didn't feel like dying. But everything with a beginning has a debt. And the land always comes calling. The storm hit 3 weeks later. Wind so loud you couldn't hear your thoughts. Snow that buried barns, took fences, silenced animals. And then the knocking came, at the cellar door, from inside the house. Not outside, inside. Hallow stood, her eyes darker than before. "I didn't want it to find me yet," she whispered. Rhett grabbed the rifle. "What is it?" She didn't answer, only turned to him slowly. "Do you trust me now?" He didn't say yes. He didn't need to, because he stepped in front of her and faced the door. The door didn't move, but the air behind it changed. It wasn't just cold, it was thick, like breathing through wool soaked in sorrow. Rhett kept the rifle up, but his hands were sweating, and the wood grain felt alive beneath his grip. Hallow hadn't moved. She stood just behind him, not frightened, not stiff, like she'd been waiting for this longer than he had. "Say nothing," she whispered. Rhett didn't speak. The knocking came again. Not frantic, not polite. 3 knocks, slow, and then silence that lasted longer than it should have. Then a voice. Not a man's voice, not a woman's. It was every voice, all at once. "You opened your door to what you didn't understand." Rhett's jaw locked. He kept his stance. Hallow stepped beside him. "I'm claimed. You can't take me." "You offered yourself," the voice replied, its sound filling the room like water rising. "I offered peace," she said, "not pain. You carry both." She didn't deny it. The doorknob twisted. Rhett aimed, but Hallow put her hand on the barrel. Not to push it down, but to remind him she was there. "If you fire," she said softly, "it becomes real, and we lose." The door creaked open a sliver. Darkness stood on the other side. Not shadows, darkness. Alive and moving, like it had come up from under the floorboards of the world. Rhett saw outlines of things he couldn't name. Shapes, fingers, maybe teeth. Hallow didn't blink. "Your time here is done," the voice said. "I'm still needed. He's broken. He can be mended." He chose silence. He chose survival. The voice paused, then came again closer. "And if he breaks you too?" Her reply was a whisper. "Promise. Then I'll still have given him something strong." The door slammed shut on its own. Silence crashed down like a felled tree. Rhett gasped. He didn't even know he'd stopped breathing. The cellar door was closed again. Locked. Still. And Hallow sank slowly to her knees like the weight had finally found her. Rhett knelt too, touched her shoulder. "Tell me what that was." She shook her head. "It won't come again. Not if we keep the old rules." "What rules?" She looked up at him. And her eyes, they were the color of soil after a hard rain. "Never speak what you want. Only what you'll give." The storm cleared 3 days later. But the world didn't feel right. Animals refused to graze. The well tasted off. And a smell hung in the wind, like burnt copper and buried things. Hallow walked barefoot through it all, never flinching. She planted roots where his wife used to kneel, lit candles in the barn, hung pine above the windows and salted the doors. When Rhett asked why, she only said, "They remember kindness." One night, while oil lamps flickered and coyotes howled too close, Rhett asked her again what she was. This time, she didn't dodge. She sat down across from him, bare feet folded under, palms open like offerings. "I was taken before I was born," she said. "My mother tried to barter with something she didn't understand. And the land heard her." He waited. She continued. "Every so often, Someone like me comes through. Born in between. Not meant for long. That's not possible, Rhett whispered. But he believed every word. I belong to no time, no tribe, just to the asking. The asking. She nodded. You asked, Rhett, in the barn. You said, send me someone who won't leave. His throat went dry. I didn't mean. You didn't have to. Want and need. They echo louder than words. He tried to pull away, tried to sleep alone. But she was always near. And when she wasn't near, he missed her so badly he felt sick. He dreamt of her, saw her dancing barefoot on the wheat stubble, holding a child with eyes just like hers, saw storms that bowed to her voice. He saw himself too, smiling, aged, but at peace. And in all those dreams, she never aged. She just stayed, exactly as she was. Spring came faster than usual, but things bloomed that had never grown before. Thistle turned to honeyflower. Trees bore fruit in months they never had. And one morning, Rhett woke to find Hallow kneeling in the dirt behind the house, hands covered in blood. His heart jumped. But when he rushed to her, she turned, smiling softly. In her hands, a rabbit, whole, alive, with eyes wide and heart beating. I didn't take it, she whispered. I gave it back. That night, they lay side by side for the first time. He asked no questions. She offered no riddles, only warmth. And that old promise. I'll give you strong children. But this time, it wasn't a bargain. It was a blessing. The rain didn't come. The wind did. And it carried dust that didn't belong. Grit from distant lands, from places Rhett had never ridden, but Hallow had. She tasted it in the air before it reached them. Something had followed her. Not the voice, not the hunger, but something older. She stood in the middle of the field, arms out, head back, as if greeting a storm she'd once loved and hated. Rhett watched her from the porch, rifle leaning beside him, unused since that night she first appeared. He didn't ask questions anymore. He waited for her to speak. She always did when it mattered. And that day she did. They found the others, she said. The ones who didn't bargain wisely. Rhett came down the steps. There are others like you? Were, she said. By that evening, she'd gathered what she needed. A jar of iron filings, a deer-hide pouch, one braid of her own hair, and a single silver ring she hadn't worn before. They'll come through the wheat, not the front. Who are they? She stared toward the tree line. They don't have names. They gave them up for strength. He didn't press. She handed him the pouch. If I tell you to run, you run. I won't leave you. If you don't, we both die. Night fell fast like it was being chased. The moon didn't show, and the wheat bent as if something unseen was walking through it. Heavy, careful, cruel. Rhett stood in the barn, oil lamp low, hands clenched around the pouch. Then he heard them. Breath that wasn't breath. A hum that made his teeth ache. And the sound of Hallow's voice, stronger than it had ever been. I remember you, she said, from outside. I know what you traded. No reply, just the wind. But it pushed the barn door open anyway. Rhett stepped back. 3 shapes moved through the field, twisting like smoke but tall as men. No faces, just cloth rotted and shifting, like they wore time itself. One spoke, not aloud but into his bones. You took what was promised. Rhett gripped the pouch. She wasn't yours. She was never yours. The wind screamed, but then, her voice cut through it. Then take me. Rhett spun toward her. She stepped forward, hands raised, silver ring glinting in the dark. If you leave him, I'll come. The shapes paused. Silence hung like an axe. Then, they bowed, one by one, and vanished. She collapsed in the wheat. He carried her back, fingers trembling the whole way. Her skin was colder than the wind, but she opened her eyes. I gave them what they needed, she whispered. You said you wouldn't leave, he choked. I didn't. She pressed his hand to her chest. I'm still here. I just gave up the rest of me. She changed after that. Not weaker, not smaller, just lighter, like the world didn't pull at her the same. and the land changed with her. Fences held longer. Wolves stopped howling. The well ran deeper than ever before. And one morning, she looked at him over fresh bread and said, "It's time." "For what?" "You'll be a father." He cried then, hard, ugly, the kind of tears that don't come from joy or sorrow, but completion. And she kissed him like he'd finally earned it. The months that followed weren't easy, but they weren't cruel. And cruelty was what Rhett had learned to expect from life. Instead, the land softened, the air sweetened. Strangers passed their homestead and tipped hats without knowing why. Birds nested in windowsills. Horses stopped spooking. And Hallow grew, not round like other women, but full of light. He was born during a thunderstorm, but no thunder sounded. Just lightning, bright and silent, like the sky wanted to watch, not warn. And when the child cried, the rain began. Slow, warm, clean. Rhett held his son in trembling arms. The boy didn't look like either of them. Ice silver, skin gold in the firelight. But the boy smiled, just once, like he already understood something Rhett never would. Hallow slept for 3 days, and when she woke, she asked for the boy, held him, rocked him, sang a song in a language older than the dirt beneath them. And then she looked at Rhett with something both fierce and tender. "He's not like you," she said. "I know. He's stronger." The boy didn't cry much. He didn't sleep much either. But when he did, things listened. The wind slowed. Crickets stopped chirping. Even the cows would lift their heads and stare toward the house like they were trying to understand what had just been born. Rhett named him Boone. Hallow called him something else in the old tongue, something she wouldn't repeat when asked. She only said it once into his ear on the second night he breathed. Then she wrapped him tight in a shawl made of 2 kinds of cloth, one from her people, the other from Rhett's mother's trunk, and whispered to the fire, "Keep him between." Boone grew fast, faster than Rhett liked. By his first birthday, he could walk steady and long. By his second, he was breaking down horse tack and putting it back without teaching. By his third, he was listening to things no one else could hear. "He hears the world," Hallow told Rhett one night, "and the world hears him back." Rhett didn't ask what that meant. He just kept watching the way animals followed the boy like he was their shepherd. One afternoon, Boone wandered into the grove behind the barn, where Rhett never let the cattle graze. It was a place his father had once called the hush. "Nothing grows right there," he used to say. "It remembers things best left buried." But Boone didn't fear it. He walked right in, sat cross-legged in the grass, and whispered. Rhett saw it from the porch, froze, started to go after him. But Hallow gripped his wrist. "Don't," she said. "He's not in danger." "You sure?" She smiled faintly. "They're the ones who ought to be careful." That night, Boone didn't speak at supper. He just drew circles, trees with eyes, a figure standing over a crib, weeping blue tears. When Rhett reached for the drawing, Boone pushed it toward him. This was a warning. Rhett looked at Hallow, who was already pale. "They saw him," she whispered. "They know what he is." The next day, the wind shifted again. Same way it had before the voice, before the night with no moon, before the things in cloth came crawling through wheat. Hallow stood in the yard, skirt blowing, hair tangled, lips trembling with a chant too old for English. Boone stood beside her, holding a rock in one hand, and nothing in the other. But the nothing glowed. Rhett didn't interrupt. He stayed in the doorway, hands clenched, jaw tight, praying to a god he hadn't spoken to in years that this time, whatever it was, it would leave them be. That night, 3 riders came up the hill. They didn't cast shadows, but their horses did. Rhett stepped off the porch with his shotgun. Boone stood in the field, didn't say a word, just held that rock in both hands, and whispered something that made the grass bow. The riders dismounted, but didn't come closer. The middle one, tallest, thin as a scarecrow and wearing a wide black hat, tipped his chin toward Boone. "This one ain't for you," he said, voice like leather left too long in the sun. "Then why are you here?" Rhett growled. "'Cause the others want him, and they ain't a skin polite no more." Boone stepped forward. No! That one word shook the barn behind them. Horses neighed in panic. The riders didn't move. But something behind them did. A shadow that walked upright, but moved like a spilled prayer. Boone raised the rock. It wasn't just a stone. Pulsed. With light. With age. And the figure in the dark hissed. Took a step back. Then another. Until the riders turned without another word and vanished into dust. Back inside, Boone laid the stone on the table. It won't stop them forever, he said. Then what will? Rhett asked. Boone looked at his mother. Then at his father. You! For weeks, nothing stirred. And then something did. Small. Soft. Like a bird's wing against the window at night. And then louder. Claws at the back door. Whispers from the floorboards. Scratching in the walls. Rhett nailed iron across every sill. Boone burned cedar and salt. Hallow never slept. Just watched the sky for signs. And when the sky finally bled purple at noon, they all knew. The reckoning had come. The ground shook. Not like thunder, but like breathing. The earth had a heartbeat now. Boone stood in the wheat barefoot. Rhett beside him. Hallow behind, hands on both their backs. What happens if we lose? Rhett asked. Boone looked up. We don't. They came not in shapes, not in cloaks, but in thoughts, in memory, in regret. Every terrible thing Rhett had ever seen or done or feared, he saw it again standing before him, mocking, beckoning. And Boone said one word. Enough. And it all shattered, like glass dropped from the tallest tower. The wheat straightened, the sky cleared, the door behind them swung open, and Rhett, just a man, just a rancher who'd once pointed a gun at a girl in a sack, fell to his knees and wept. The land healed slower than the sky. There were still nights when the walls creaked too loud, when the well bubbled instead of whispered, when Boone would stop playing and just listen. But the evil was gone, driven out or buried too deep to claw its way up again. And Rhett? He no longer carried his rifle everywhere. He no longer looked over his shoulder, no longer woke to phantom screams or walked the fences with dread. There was peace now, hard-earned, costly, but theirs. He sat on the porch most evenings, boots off, hat low, watching Boone chase the wind, watching Hallow braid her hair slower now, softer now, as if she had time to spare. She did. They all did. Boone's 5th birthday came with no storm, no strange visitors, no gifts from beyond the veil, just neighbors, ones who hadn't dared come up that far hill in years. Old Man Melton brought his fiddle. The Wilkins girls brought honey cake. And when Rhett lifted Boone to sit on the fence rail, someone asked, "Where'd this boy come from?" Hallow smiled without answering. Rhett just said, "Right where he belongs." That night, when the house was quiet again, Boone asked a question neither parent expected. "Why did you keep me?" Rhett turned from the fire. "What? You didn't have to," Boone said. "I wasn't normal. I scared you. I scared everyone." Rhett leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "I wasn't kept, Boone. Not really. My pa worked me. My ma passed young. And I never had a home that felt like one. So when I saw you in her arms, with that look in your eyes like you already knew the world wasn't kind, I swore I'd give you what I never had." Boone blinked, said nothing, just crawled into his father's lap like a child again, and stayed there a long while. They planted corn the next spring, and it came up golden, not yellow golden. Birds didn't eat it. The wind didn't bend it. It just grew straight and proud like Boone himself. Word spread that maybe the curse was lifted, that maybe the land on Rhett's hill had turned sacred. People came, gentle folks, desperate ones, wanderers and widows and orphan children, and Rhett never turned them away. They built cabins along the ridge, a small schoolhouse, a chapel even. Boone helped raise its walls without breaking a sweat. Folks called him blessed. Rhett didn't argue, but Hallow warned him, "He's not here to be worshipped." "Then what is he?" She kissed her son's forehead. "A beginning." The girl came in July. No shoes, no name, just eyes as wild as Boone's had been once. She stood at the edge of the wheat and said, I dreamed of this place. Boone stepped forward, took her hand, said nothing, led her in, and Hallow didn't flinch, because she knew the cycle had turned again. But this time it didn't feel like a threat, felt like a seed. Boone grew older, tall as his father, voice deep and slow, words chosen carefully, like every sentence was a spell. He never left the hill, didn't need to. People came to him for counsel, for blessing, for safety, and he gave it freely. Never claimed to be holy, never acted like he'd earned power. He just listened, and sometimes that was enough. Rhett's beard grayed, his hands stiffened, and one morning, Boone found him asleep in the rocker, head back, hat tipped low, face turned to the sun. But his chest didn't rise, and his eyes didn't open. Boone sat beside him for hours, didn't cry, didn't speak, just held his father's hand until the stars came out. Then he whispered, "You kept your promise," and carried Rhett inside. Hallow didn't weep either. She sat beside her son at the fire and said, "He gave you his whole self." Boone nodded. "I know." And when they buried him, beneath the tree that never bent, they marked the grave with a stone Boone had carried since he was 3. The one that once glowed. It didn't glow anymore, but it felt warm, and that was enough. Years passed. The land changed, but not the way the world did. Not in the sharp, hungry way of cities or wars or profit. Changed softly. A little more wheat, a little more song, a few more children in the schoolhouse. Boone grew older, married the girl with no shoes. They had 3 children, all with eyes like his, and sometimes, on quiet nights, Boone would stand at the edge of the wheat and remember the first time he whispered to the wind. The first time he heard something whisper back. And he'd smile, because nothing whispered anymore. Not like that, because whatever had haunted them, was long gone now, turned to dust, or story, or warning. And Boone? He was just a man, just a rancher's son. But when folks asked what made his land so blessed, he'd always answer the same. My mama gave the world her strength, and my daddy gave it his heart.